Alrighty, let's get started. So, we are officially in week 2 of the semester. One thing that I added on the homepage is office hours. I have office hours, and if you click on this here, you can see what time. Right, it's all the stuff in green. So Monday through Thursday, you have plenty of time to see me. Otherwise, you can send me your emails. If you need me to meet with you some other time, we can probably arrange that too. Just let me know. And also, there is going to be help in the STEM Center. So at Gavilan, there's a STEM Center. If you just Google Gavilan STEM Center, you're going to see you can get to this webpage. And from what I've been told, they have a person who has a degree in computer science who's there all the time. So if you need more help, STEM Center, room MA 102, pretty much every day, all day. Okay? So there's resources. In addition to this, I am setting up a tutor also for the class. And as soon as I get her hours, what time she'll be available this semester, I'll post those as well. Okay, but for now, you have me, you have the STEM Center, and there's plenty of resources to succeed in this class, as long as you keep up. So, week 1, we already covered, how to download and install Python on your computer, how to run a program, how to write comments, what's output, what are variables, what's input, what are the different types. Okay, so I'm just going to go and quickly review this. Let me do options, idle preferences, get the size a little bigger. There you go. Okay, so this is what we covered last time. So this is pretty much the lecture that I have posted right here, lecture 831:17. These are the notes. There's also a video that goes with these notes when I went over this thing last time. So first of all, comments. You have to write comments in order for you to get full grades for all your programs. At the top, you need to have comments showing your program name, your Python version that you're using, when you started, when you finished this thing, and the description is this stuff here. Basically, you can just go to the assignment in the class webpage, copy it, paste it in there, and now you don't have to switch back and forward. You always have, what you're supposed to do within your program. Okay, so this is what every program needs to have. Again, what is a comment? Anything that starts with a pound is really not considered part of your program. These are just documentation for us humans who are going to read your code, or mainly for yourself who is going to read your code. These three single quotes indicate multi-line comments. So if you don't want to go and put a pound in front of every line that you want to designate as a comment, you put three single quotes and then 3 single quotes, and everything that's in between them is also considered a comment. So everything that you see here in green and red, all comments. Okay? So these comments are 30% of your grade. Okay? And I already told you what comments are. They're not part of your code. They're just explanation for the code. One thing that I covered was output. Output is information that comes out of your program. You use the print to do that. The print command tells Python show something in the shell window. In the shell window is where the program runs. If I run this thing, right, this is the shell window. This is where the program runs. Okay, print, parentheses, and then quotes is the format to show a string. Okay, anything in quotes is considered a string. Quotes, single quotes or double quotes, it doesn't really matter as far as Python is concerned. Right, so I can change this to single quotes. It will work exactly the same. Other programming languages differentiate between double quotes and single quotes. Double quotes are strings, single quotes are characters. Python doesn't. Okay? So whatever you have in quotes inside a print is going to show exactly as is. Those are pretty much your labels. There's other data types besides strings. Strings are basically text. Anything in quotes is a string. We also have numbers. Numbers can be whole numbers. Those are the integers, and decimal numbers. Those are the floats. Okay, and this is the kind of information that we store into our programs. The programs can read them from a file, can get it from a sensor, you can type it into the program somehow. Okay, and we store this information in variables. Okay, what are variables? Just words we make up to store information in memory. Okay, same way that google.com refers to some IP address, same way a variable age refers to some memory address. Okay, and these words that we make up are pretty much arbitrary as long as we stick to these rules here. And the rules are: you can't start the variable with a number, you can't have spaces in your variables, you can't have any special characters except the underscore, that's the only one that's allowed. And you should not use reserved words, even though Python will allow you to do this, where other languages will give you an error. So it's not really can't, but just don't use reserved words. And the reason you don't want to do that is, for example, let's say right here, I'm going to make a variable called print, right? And I'm going to make this print equal to 10. Okay, as soon as I do this, now I'm going to have a new variable called print, which is equal to 10, and I have erased the default meaning of print as far as Python is concerned. Okay, so now it thinks print is equal to 10, and when I say print parentheses hello, it will give me an error because now I overrode the meaning of print, like this, right? So we'll understand more about this error later, but bottom line is don't use reserved words like I just did. Don't make variables out of these. Okay, print, input, float, int, these are some of the reserved words. Okay, and other than that, have meaningful variable names, right? If it is supposed to hold the information for age, call it age. Don't call it num. Or, you know, if you have the information for weight, call it weight. Don't call it num2, because later on when you read your code and you're trying to figure out how to finish your program, whatever it is you're doing, it's going to be hard to figure out what's num, what's num2, right? It's much easier to understand name, age, weight. You know, be clear with you and, you know, choose meaningful variable names. Bless you. Okay. So here I have declared different variables. Basically, I'm telling the program, okay, there's going to be this word called, you know, this word name, which is going to refer to some place in memory where this information is stored. Okay, and this is a string variable, right? This here age is an integer variable, which is a whole number. This here weight is a float variable, which is just a decimal number. Okay, so these are the basic data types in Python. There's also lists, there's tuples and dictionaries, and there's other stuff. They're more complex, you know, data types. We'll get to them later. Okay, something else, string concatenation. String concatenation means when you have one string, so this is string called first, this is another string called last. If I say first plus last, when you have a plus with two strings, that's the concatenation, and it just makes one bigger, longer string out of these two strings. Okay, so when I say print first last, what this thing is going to show me, it's going to show me Alex Stoikov, just like that. No space. Okay, if I wanted to add space in what this thing is going to show me, I go in there and I put a little space in there. Okay, so actually what it will show me this: first underscore last equals. Okay, so what else? More examples here how Python will not be able to add different data types. So for example, this is a string here, this is a string, and this here is an integer, right? If I go in and say, all right, first plus last, just like this, right? Let me erase this. Okay, if I try to run this, right, it doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? can convert int object to string implicitly. So it cannot do it without you specifically telling it what to do. So this is a string, this is an integer. It can't do both. It cannot do this addition. What it could do is you can tell it, okay, make this a string. And as soon as you do that and you run the program, no error, because now you're specifically telling it add a string plus a string. So that's the concatenation. Okay, and what is it going to do? What is it going to show when I do this here? First underscore last equals what? Huh? Huh? Let me hide this so you don't see it. So we already said that this one here, when I have string concatenation, I have one string and then another string. When I do a plus, right, it adds the two strings together right next to each other, right? So here I have one string and then again another string. What do you think is going to show me here? Alex, and then what? 3. Yeah, exactly. All right. And another example. In here, I have a string called first, and then I have an integer called last. And if I say first plus last, and I do this business, right? What is it going to show me? It's going to show me 33. Okay. Well, let's try something else. Let me grab this here. I'm going to copy it. One more example. So let's say I have, this time I'm not going to do this. All right. What if I do first, I'm going to say this is an integer. All right. What is it going to show me now, do you think? Now I'm telling it add one integer plus another integer. Actually, that's the example that I had under, but whatever. Yeah? 6, yes. So this one is going to show you first underscore last is equal to 6. Okay, and I didn't realize that was the example I had here. All right. So there you go. It will do meaningful math with numbers as long as you tell it, treat this as a number. Okay? Other than this, what I did was I showed you how to format your output. Okay? So we had a bunch of variables here. One was name, one was age, one was weight. One way to show the variables is this way. Right? So when I do that, it shows me this top line right here. This piece. Whoops. All right, this piece right here. Okay, so notice there are no spaces here. I have not inserted a space here, or here inside the quotes, or here inside of the quotes, or here inside of the quotes, or here. Okay, but because we have comma, Python automatically inserts that extra space down here. Right, so there's an extra space here, there's an extra space here. Every time there's a comma in your code, in the print, it will insert an extra space. Okay? So that's one thing. Another thing that I did underneath it is to show you that basically there is no difference between having something in double quotes or single quotes. As far as Python is concerned, same thing. Okay? So these two are basically exactly the same thing. This one here underneath is another way to format your output. This time we're not using a comma, we're using percents, right? %s indicates a string, %i integer, %f float, right? So I'm telling it here we're going to insert a string, this particular string. Here I'm telling it we're going to insert an integer, this particular integer. Here I'm telling it we're going to insert a float, this particular float. Okay? If you want to, you can also round this thing, right? So this particular example here is the same thing as the one on top, except instead of %f, what I did is I added a %.2f. And what is that going to do? It's going to round my number to 2 digits after the decimal. Okay? There's another way for you to do this. Okay, instead of doing it this way, right, where you have kind of like a mix of the % and the comma business going, you can also have one big string, and inside of this string you're going to have %s, %i, %.2f, and now we're basically telling it the same thing. Insert a string here, insert an integer here, insert a float here, and which string are we going to insert? Well, the first percent here is going to be the first variable here. The second percent here is going to be the second variable here. The third percent here is going to be the third variable here. And this time we only have 1%, parentheses, and then all the variables inside of the parentheses separated by comma. That's the syntax. Those are the rules of the language. Okay? Underneath this, I am showing you one more way to do format output. This time we're not using commas, we're not using percents, we're using the plus business. And this is already familiar to you because we did this kind of stuff, right? This is the string concatenation, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm telling you, okay, there's going to be this string plus this string plus this string plus this one plus this one plus this one, makes one big string and does a print with it. Okay? So that was the basics of, output, formatting your output, variables, different data types. Okay, and then I went over input. What is an input? Information that goes into the program. And we do this using input, keyword or reserved word or function, whatever you want to call it. So this is the way we're going to do input in Python. We have a variable name is equal to input, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this piece of text here is what shows up for the user right here on the bottom. Okay, if I don't have this, the program is not going to be very nice to the user. So if I try to run this program now, it's just going to stay here and you're like, wait, what am I supposed to do? Is the program running? Is it crashing? Is it waiting for me to do something? Okay, and the reason for this is behavior is because I got rid of my prompt. So this text in here in quotes is a prompt, which is basically you tell the user what to enter, right? Without having a meaningful prompt, the user gets lost, program isn't usable. Okay? So this information is what's going to show up here when I run the program. Now it tells me please enter a new name. I can enter whatever I want, right? Because this is a string input. Okay? When I have an input, my input can be a string, can be an integer, can be a float. I can enter any kind of an information as long as I have an input. Basic input, nothing in it. Okay, and then immediately after I do some kind of an input, it is a good practice for you to show yourself what you entered into your program, because maybe you didn't enter what you think you entered, or maybe you didn't enter it as the correct data type. Quick way to show it, to find that out, is just show it to yourself. Okay, you can also do an integer input. Same way as that you did input, you basically say int, parentheses in front of it, and then parentheses after, and then the input stays the same. Right? And the only trick for this one is when we're talking about an int input, I cannot go in there and enter a string. Right? You get an error. If I try to enter a decimal number when the input is supposed to be, right? String can be whatever. Let's say trying to enter a decimal number. Okay? Cannot enter an integer. Well, you cannot enter a float, which is what you're entering here, when your expected input is an integer. That's basically the meaning of this here. Okay? So when we're talking about an int input, your input can only be an integer. Okay? And then similar, we have a float input. You just say float parentheses input. Okay? And the float, when you're entering a float, you can enter an integer, you can enter a float. The only thing you cannot enter is a string. Okay? So those are the basics of your input. Question?
Okay, by looking at that error,
Yeah.
tells us the line number. Is there such thing in Python that we can tell us
Yes.
that particular line?
Yeah, there is. Okay, so Python, as you have maybe noticed, this is not the nicest editor in the world. It doesn't even have a scroll bar on the bottom, right? Which is awesome. Quote, being sarcastic. And there's a reason I think they're doing this, and it's because they want you to kind of write narrow code. They don't want you to have your code scroll off, away from the, visible area. And your question was, how do I figure out the line number? So there's this here says line 98, right? All right, you can go into this editor here, and if you look at the bottom right corner, it shows you the line. Yeah, so it sucks as an editor, but it's not a total failure. Okay, so 98, where's my 98? This is the line 98. Okay, so that's what you do. And then honestly though, it doesn't bother me that much. Yeah, even if I write something fancy, I mean, there's other editors. I don't know if I have it. There's PyCharm. Might as well show you this. Okay, I use PyCharm every once in a while, and you can use it too. I tell this to my Java class and my C++ class. I really like JetBrains. JetBrains are the ones who make these IDEs. You have CLine, PyCharm, IntelliJ, whatever it's called, right? So this PyCharm here is a way for you to write your Python code and run it in one place, okay? Even though it's fancier, it costs actually like $200 or whatever it is. Well, don't worry, for you it's free. If you go and you register with your gavilan.edu email, you can get this thing for free. Not just this, but all their other software. If you have any kind of a .edu email, which is an educational, email, they give you a free license for a whole year. And as long as you're in school, you can just relicense the software that they offer for free, which is pretty awesome, I think. Imagine if Photoshop did that. That would have been nice, but they don't. Okay? So it's a cool way to get students started in a professional grade software so that when they graduate, maybe they'll still use it. Anyway, I don't use this. Most of the times, it just kind of annoys me. It's too much extra things going on that I don't need. I just write my code in here. Okay, so as much as this IDE is not the best, I kind of like it. Okay, and what does IDE stand for? Integrated Development Environment, which is software that allows you to write and run your programs all from the same place. Okay? Obviously, it shows you different colors for different reserved words and all that good stuff. So one thing that I did not show you last time is, and there were some hints in here that I gave you for the different assignments, and basically at the end of my program, I showed you my output. Right? So yeah, every program that you have, make sure that it has these multi-line comments at the end to show me how the program ran. If it doesn't, I'm going to take off like 30% off at least. I should have put like at least 30% off. Okay, I'll get evil with taking points off unless you follow my format, because I offer you a regrade. Okay, so I want you to follow my format. You're going to get it right one way or another, or you're going to fail the class. Okay, that's the bottom line. It's very easy. Run the program, copy paste your comments in the bottom, and we're all happy. Okay, I don't have the time to run your program, and I definitely don't have time to run the program and realize that it doesn't work. I'm just going to assume it doesn't work if you didn't run it for me. Okay, that's the logic. In the real world, you got to test your stuff extensively before you give it to the customer. I'm the customer, all right? I have high expectations. If you don't follow my requirements, you don't get paid. So that's the spiel. Well, the customer is going to have a finished product, and they're going to, the thing's going to work flawlessly for them. That's the idea. I'm not doing beta testing for you. So, one thing that I did not mention here is that, let's say, for example, in here, I have, I want to tell the user something like this. I want to say, all right, age is equal to age, right? Just like that, because I've been doing this stuff inside the print, right? I did this for format in the print. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to do the same thing in the input. Okay? So as soon as I get to my input, let's see what happens. So we're not there yet. Here's my string input. And then I go to my input, and now I have an error. Input expected at most 1 argument got 3. All right? So the moral of the story is you can't do this when you have an input. It works fine when you have a print, not when you have an input. So guess what? All you got to do is, there's a couple ways to do it. One way to do it is you can use this format when you just do plus. All right? So I can just say, all right, plus str parentheses age plus, right? And then if I run it again, then we're good. So all right, string here, it's asking me for the age. Age is Oh, that's the first thing. Duh. I forgot what I'm doing. So here, put a dot in there. One more time, so it looks a little better. Okay, age is equal to 19. Please enter new age. Okay, so new age, 55. Okay, let me kill this thing. Control C to stop the program. Go back to my codes. Let's do another example. So here I have, I'm going to do the same format. I'm going to say, all right, weight is equal to, and we already know this is not going to work, right? But just in case you forgot from 5 seconds ago, let me show you again. All right. String inputs, age inputs. Okay, and again, it's telling me input expected at most 3 arguments, got 3. You don't know what arguments are yet because I haven't shown you functions yet. When we get to functions, you're gonna know what arguments are. Okay, and maybe you know what they are. Good for you. But anyway, bottom line is, it thinks that these are 3 separate things. It thinks this is one thing, second thing, third thing. Those are the 3 arguments. And what it's telling me is it wants only one thing. Okay, so one way to turn it into only one thing is just to do this, right? Just put the plus str. Another way to do this is to get rid of this here, and we're going to use the percent sign. So percent, what was this, float? I'm going to go percent .2f, right? There's going to be a float in there, a little comma, please enter a new weight, and then right in here, I'm going to say percent weight, like that. Okay, keep your fingers crossed, hope it works. So name, age, and there you go. Yeah, it works. Weight, so I'm going to give it a new weight. Right, and I can give it an integer or a decimal when it's a float, and it's all good. All right. So that was basically your review from last time. Any questions? We're good? All right. What are we going to talk about today? Well, let's have a look. So this here is, so the description is review of lecture 1, and which was input, output, variables, right? Now the next thing that we're going to talk about today is lecture 2 is, I believe, selection. Alright, so what's selection? Let's jump to week 2. And by the way, you have 5 assignments already due from week 1. Okay, I'm going to grade it at the end of this week. I usually give it like a week delay and then I start grading. But there's going to be about 6, maybe even more assignments every week. If you are not keeping up with the work, you're going to get hit hard and very soon, in about this week, okay? And the same thing goes for pretty much most of my classes, okay? So name of the game is keep up. So next one, we're talking about selection. All right, so let's have a look at the selection. I have like a little link in there. We can click it. All right, and what I'm going to do is I am going to, so this is my review. What do I want to do? I am going to take out my input here so I don't see it. So I'm going to take out this here, this one, this one, and I wonder if I want to do that. Hold on. Let me do a multi-line comment on this whole thing. Hopefully it works. Because I want to leave all this stuff here from before. And so this is the review. Alright, that's your review. Let's see if I can turn this whole thing off. Sometimes when you have a whole bunch of multi-line comments, there's some issues in there. Let's hope there isn't. Let's test the program. Okay, good. No errors. We're happy. Or I'm happy at least. So now we're going to do lecture 2. Alright, selection. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the web page. I'm going to copy this thing here. Copy Oops. And paste the stuff here. Okay? So, from what you have learned, when I run this program, what is it going to show me? All these things, right? If I run it, and when you're in doubt, just run the program. Right? So it shows me all this stuff. Okay? Which is what we expect. That's what we learned so far. Let me just close this window so we start fresh. Okay, but let's say I wanted to choose only one of these messages based on this the value of this variable. Okay, so if my age is equal to 25, which one of these messages do I want to show up? You're 21. Okay, good. So how am I going to make the program select? Okay, so this is the way we're going to make our program seem intelligent, by using selection. Okay, and it works like this. So I'm going to use if, that's a reserved word. I'm going to say age, this is less than 18, and then colon, and then I'm going to indent this inside my if. Okay, so the way it works is this message is going to show only if my age is less than 18. Okay, I do tab. You can do tab. You can do spaces. Just make sure it's consistent. Yeah, if you do indentation is important. It's like everything in Python. Python is indentation sensitive. I think if I just go in there and I do this, let's try it. Unexpected indented. Well, that's something else. Yeah, so sometimes just having an indentation in front of the comment will give you an error. Right now it's complaining because I did not indent anything inside my if. Expected unindented block. Okay, so I have to go in there and indent it. So I can do print. So if I wanted to, let's do this real quick. So that's a little something that I actually forgot. Well, it was in one of your sample programs you had to type up from week 1. So if you did the homework, you already know it, but I didn't cover it in the lecture. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Print here, and then I'm going to do another print here. So I have 2 different prints, right? So both of these things are going to do their job if the age is less than 18. So if I run the code, what don't you like? I forgot. So what's wrong with my syntax here? Forgot the parentheses. Excellent. Okay, and honestly, a lot of times, especially in the beginning, when I have a sample program, I tell you type all this stuff up and get it to work. I hope you have a bunch of errors like I am having them. Okay, that's the best way to learn the code, learn the programming language, encounter these errors. Okay. Anyway, so if I run it again, I fix my syntax. Nothing. Why? Why doesn't it show anything? Is age less than 18? No. Okay, let's try to make it 17. Run again. There you go. You're 18, right? So now what I want to do is I'm going to put both of these on the same line. Okay, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do end equals quote quote like that. Single quote, single quote. You can do double quote too. It works. Okay, now it's on the same line. Okay, so print will automatically insert a new line unless you do this end equals quote quote business. Okay, so now you know. And the reason I did this is because if I do a little space here, just to point out how important indentation is for Python, things are not going to work. It doesn't like it. Okay, so you can do single space, you can do tabs. I kind of do tabs all the time because it's easier for me. Okay, and that's it. Just make sure it's all set up, all perfect. Okay, if one of them is off by a little bit, things are not going to work. Okay, so Python is indentation sensitive. Other programming languages are not. Where in other programming languages you have like a curly bracket here and a curly bracket there, and then it knows that everything inside the curly brackets is inside of the if. Python doesn't do curly brackets, so the only way for you to tell it that something is inside the if is with indentation. Okay, so now let me go over this piece right here. Okay, so this here, so that thing here is called a condition. They call it Boolean condition. I just call it condition. What is a condition? Check to see if something is true or false. Okay, this piece, that is a relational operator. Let me make it a capital. Relational operator. Okay, there's a few relational operators. Okay, I might have them in my web page, so let me see if I can copy them so I don't have to type them. Man, I haven't added it yet. Oh, there they are. Oops. Okay, so these are my relational operators. Okay, relational operators. Okay, this is equal, equal, two equal signs. That's the equal. This is the greater than or equal, less than or equal, not equal, less than, greater than. Okay, we're using these relational operators. We can build conditions. Okay, and what are the conditions? Well, this kind of stuff. You can have like a variable x equals variable y. In this case, you're checking to see if this thing is equal to this thing. In this case, you're checking to see if this thing is greater than or equal to this thing. In this case, you're checking to see if this thing is less than or equal to this thing. Okay, etc., etc., etc. So using the relational operators, we can build conditions. Okay, so you might ask yourself, how does the computer know to figure out if, how does it figure out if something's true or false? Well, go to this. Okay, and that ties in with these conditions, right? So first of all, the computer has a processor. The processor has two pieces in it. One is the arithmetic logic unit, and the other one is the control unit. Okay, the control unit sends information to memory and gets information from memory, and basically there's a constant send of information back and forth using the control unit. The arithmetic logic unit does exactly this kind of stuff. Okay, the ALU will do things like arithmetic, logic, right? And some of the logic is checking to see if something's true or false. Okay, so it's built within the processor itself to see if something's true or false. And we just take advantage of that. So, using conditions. So let's do some conditions. So I'm going to have a variable x is equal to 5 and variable y is equal to 6. Okay, and let's try some of these things using prints. So I'm going to say, all right, here this one is x is equal 5. Okay, and here I'm going to say x equals 5. Oops, not 5. Well, yeah, let's do it with 5 for now. Okay, I'm going to run this thing, and x equals 5 is true. Okay, so you can see it can actually evaluate this to be either true or false. Right, so this is true. Okay, in fact, I guess, yeah, I'll leave it like this, and I'll put a little is in there. Okay, so let's try some more. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to say, all right, x is equal to y. Right, x equals y. Is this true or false? Are you sure? When in doubt, let's run. False. Okay, false. So this one's true. Okay, let's do some more. So I'm going to get this whole thing. Okay, so x is greater than or equal to y. Is this true? False. Let's run. Yeah, that's a false. Okay. Another one, x is less than or equal to y. True or false? True. It's not equal, but it's less than. All right, there's a true. And then we also have the less than. X is less than y. Is that true? Yes. Run. Okay, so it's a good idea for you to be doing what I'm doing. So it's basically an idea of how your code is supposed to work, maybe even write out what you expect it to show, and then run the program. Okay? A lot of times when you develop big algorithms, that's how you do it. You have this really big, complicated idea of how you want to do something, and then you try to do it. First thing you want to do is you want to show yourself, is this true or false? Is it really doing what I want it to do? Sometimes you didn't think it through enough and it's not working. Okay? So next one, greater than, is x greater than y? True or false? False, right? It's not. There you go, false at the bottom. All right, what else is left? Which relational operator did I not use? Not equal, okay. Is this one going to be true? True. Check. True. Okay? So, these here, these are my conditions. Maybe I should have set it up nicer, but whatever. This, right? These here are conditions. Okay? So that's exactly what happens when you have some kind of a condition inside of an if. Either it's going to be true, or it's going to be false. And if it is true, right? If the condition is true, whatever is indented under the if will happen. Okay? All right. So let's do the rest of them. So this one is, let's do you're over 21 first, right? Right? How am I going to write an if for this? You help me out. If age is what? Greater than 21. Right? You're over 21 years old. Okay, I'm going to do this. And then let's do this one next. How am I going to do a range of things? If age has to be between 18 and 21. So let's include the 18. Greater than or equal to 18. You can actually say and, but let's not do the and just yet. So I'm going to say this, and then inside of this thing, so if it's greater than or equal to 18, and in here I'm going to have another if age is less than or equal to 21, that is when I'm going to show this message. Yep. So I have, this is an example of a nested if. Nested if. So I have one if this thing is true, we're going to go inside of it, and then in there's only one thing, which is this if, and if this one is true, whoops, then we're going to go inside of this one. So that's a nested if. And yes, you do need the indentation. And then if I change this thing to, let's say, 19, let's hope it works, then your age is between 18 and 21, and it shows up right here. Okay? So far, so good? Any questions? Okay? All right. So next one is, you mentioned an end. So let's do the end. There's another way to do this. Another way to do the above nested if is using and. Okay? And it goes like this. If age is greater than or equal to 18 and age is less than or equal to 21, then you're going to give it this message. Okay? Is it going to work the same? Let's try. Run the program. And yeah, both of these messages show up, so both of them work the same. Okay, so, and this brings me to the logical operator and, right? Using the logical operator and. Okay, so the logical operator basically, and I have a truth table for an and in there, so I don't have to type it up. Okay, so I'm going to paste it right in here. Right? So if you want something to happen when both of the conditions are true, then we use an and. Okay? And the truth table is something like this. So you had an if age is greater than 18 or less than 21. So that means we have one condition and another condition, right? And the possible ways these can be is true, true, false, true, true, false, false, false. Okay, the only time this whole thing is going to turn out to be true, and we're going to do whatever's inside or indented inside of the under the if, is when both of them are true. Okay, if either one of them is true, is false, or both of them are false, then the whole thing evaluates to false. So it will not happen if either one of them is false. Make sense? That's an AND. Okay, so that's the logical operator AND. Okay? Question? All right. What else? So, I guess the next thing is this invalid age. Okay? So, I'm going to get this invalid age, and I'm going to move this thing to all the way in the beginning. Right? So, if there is some kind of an invalid age, we want to give it a message. This is an invalid age. Okay, what age doesn't make sense? Okay, let's go with negative first, right? You can't have a negative age unless you're born BC or something like that. All right, that would have been funny. So let's say we can't have a negative age. All right, so I'm going to say if age is less than 19 or 0, right? Can't have a negative age, right? Can't have a negative age. Okay, and then you hit the tab, right? So this message is going to show when I have a negative age, so I'm going to go in there and mess with this negative. Okay, so now which message is going to show? It's going to show me this, right? Any of the other ones? No? All right, let's find out. Is negative 19 less than 18? It is. All right, but we don't want to see that message. So how am I going to prevent it from showing any of these other ones without, if the first one's true? I just make it an elif. Oops. Elif. This is also going to be an elif. Damn it. Elif. Okay, so what's the meaning of elif? I'll put a little comment here. Elif only gets checked when the previous is false. Does that make sense? So if the way it's going to work is, if this is true, we're not going to check it, right? So let's add that too. So when the previous if is true, the below elifs will not be checked. So it's basically a way to make it stop at the first thing that's true. Okay, that's the purpose of this if-elif chain. Okay, so let's try it, run again. If the age is negative, invalid age stops there. Okay, so it's a way for you to prevent some messages from showing up. It's also a way for you to prevent the computer from thinking about extra things that it doesn't have to, right? If the value is bad, don't waste its time on doing all these other stuff. So that was if the age is less than 0, okay? And you mentioned something about a big number. So and that brings me to the fun part. What is the oldest documented human being? Do we know? Anyone? Bueller? What? That's a close one. Let's Google it. Oldest human being. What is it?
It's like 114, right? Something like that?
It's 122 and a half.
Oh, and a half. Great.
122 and a half. Yeah, 122 years and 164 days. So it's right under the half. Okay? So it is this lady, this French woman called Jeanne Comment. Okay? And I'm just gonna what do you think she did until she was 119?
There's another 146. Oldest human that's in Indonesia.
Yeah, if you count Moses, there might be even an older one. But we need the birth certificate, right? So it's it's a documented human being. Like somebody from India might claim they lived there 300 years, and they might look like they're 500, but we don't have their birth certificate, so we're not going to count it. Right? This lady here, they verified her birth certificate. It's legit. Okay. So my question is, what do you think she did until she was 119? What healthy habits do you think she did every day to live that long? That's her. So I'm just gonna give you a clue. Hold on. Let's Google Jean comment. So just Google her, and that'll be a clue. Jean comments, images. That's her. She smoked every day until she was 119, and the only reason she stopped at 119 is because she was too old to light up her own cigarettes, and she hated asking other people to do it for her. Okay? She also drank red wine every day. She ate a bunch of chocolate any chance she got, and there you go. That's the key to longevity. Now you know what to do. But anyway, what we're gonna do is, for the sake of our program, what we're gonna say is, all right, can't have an age over 123, right? We'll say that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another if my age is bigger than 123, I'm going to say the same message. Okay? So I'm going to mess with this thing. I'm going to go there and change this thing to like 950. Okay? Run it. And that's an invalid age, and it stops. Okay? But notice how I wrote the same message 2 times. Okay? And let's try to find a way to combine these 2 things. Just kind of like I did with the and here. Where is the and? The and here at the bottom, right? It's what I'm going to do here too. So what I'm going to do is I am going to rewrite the above 2 if using the logical operator OR. Okay? There's an OR. So it goes like this. I'm just going to take these out, or actually, yeah, I'll take it out for now. Take this out. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, if my age is less than 0 or my age is greater than 123, then I show this message. Like that. Run the program. Still an invalid age. Change this to a negative number. Still an invalid age. Okay? So that's an OR. How does the OR work? The OR, I have an OR table for you, which I'm also going to copy paste. Right? So that was, and I'm going to put it right here. Right, so if you want something to happen when either one of the conditions is true, then we use an OR, and again, we have this kind of a business where age is less than 0, and then you have an OR, then you have an age greater than 123, so you have one condition, another condition, and the possible ways for these to be, you can have a true, true, false, true, true, false, 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 okay? So this is slightly different, or it is different than the end, because this thing is only false when both of them are false. When either one of these is true, the whole thing evaluates to true, and then you can do whatever's inside the end, whatever's indented inside of the if. Okay? So that's the OR. So you have an if, you have an elif, you have an and, you have an OR. Okay? And one last thing that I forgot to mention is the else. So let's do this at the end. Okay, so I'm going to say, all right, I have num is equal to 10. So I'm going to say, all right, if num equals 10, well, let's do it this way. if num is greater than 0, right? Print the number is positive. Okay? Then I guess I could have L if num equals 0. Alright? I'll say print the number is 0. And then last one, I'm going to have an else. And that one's just going to have a print the number is negative. Okay, so the else is the new thing that I haven't told you yet. And so what is an else? Else happens automatically when the previous if or elif is false. Okay, so the elif gets checked when the previous if or elif is false, while the else happens automatically when the previous thing is false. Alright, so if I give it a 10, it's going to show me this message. Okay, if I give it a, let's try it. Huh? Alright, I forgot this. Okay. So the number is positive. Okay, let's go change this to 0. Check again. Number is 0. Give it a negative 90. And that's a negative. Okay? Question?
How do you break, let's say if in the middle of the else if you want to break that loop, how do you do that?
Well, we're not doing loops yet.
Oh.
Yeah. Next week we're going to do loops.
Oh.
Yeah, repeating things, right? Yeah, we're not, this week we're just going to do selection. Next week we're going to do repetition. Okay? Maybe next week, maybe the week after that. I'm not sure. But yeah, we're going to do that. Like say if the user enters if the user enters a negative age, you're going to tell them, well, that's a bad age, enter another one, and then they're going to keep entering things until they get it right. So that will be the repetition using a while loop, but when we get to that. Okay? We're not there yet. So this is basically, in a nutshell, everything there is as far as ifs, else, elifs, and or are concerned. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so let's look at some other stuff that I have on the class webpage. I'm not going to type all this stuff in the codes, but it's here. So you already saw you can have an if, right? You can have a nested if. You can have an and. You can have an or. Right? These are just the possible things you could do. Right? You can have a bunch of ifs after each other. You don't have to have if, elif, else. You can just have if. Okay, if that's what you want, if that's how you want your program to work. You can have an if and an elif. Okay? And you can have multiple elifs, basically. Okay? And there can be only one else. Right? So this is an if, elif, else. You can't have multiple else's. So I can't go in my code and do this. Else again. Print pi. Right? It shouldn't let me, it shouldn't work. There you go. Okay, why is that? Because you can't have more than one else's inside of this else if chain. So when it ends with an else, that's it. That's the final thing that happens. Okay? You can have an if and a couple of elifs. It doesn't have to end with an else. You already saw that. You can have just an if and an else. You don't have to have an elif. You can have just if and then something else happens by default. Okay? Some of the common mistakes are having an else by itself or having multiple else's like I just showed you. Having a condition for an else. So I can't go into my code and say, well, else num is less than 0, right? I can't do that because the else is not supposed to have a condition. Okay? All right? So no condition inside of the else because it happens automatically when the previous thing is false. You cannot have a single elif by itself. And for example, you can't start with an elif here. I guess I'll go with this, so we'll think it's okay. I should have made this an LF also. Okay, so basically, I can't go all the way to the top. Where was this? Where did it start? I can't start the whole thing with an LF, right? There has to be an if first, okay? This also applies when you have nested things. So I have an elif, right? So if this thing is true, then we go in here and if this other thing is true, I cannot do this here. Okay? When you're starting a new indentation, it's a new page. You have to start again fresh from an if. Okay? So if I try to do this, that will be another error. And there it is. Okay? So that's another common mistake that I've seen quite a bit. Students do. Yeah, you cannot have it by itself. You cannot have a condition after this. And this one, very common one, is trying to do this kind of stuff. Did I fix it? Yes, I did. So let's say I go in here and I do this. Okay, I'm not sure if it will give me an error. Let's find out. Make it an if. All right, so what's wrong with this picture? Two equal signs. All right, so the single equal sign is the assignment operator, which makes one thing equal to another thing. Double equal sign checks to see if something is equal. So don't mistake one with the other. Okay, you're lucky because Python is a pretty user-friendly language, and it will give you this kind of an error message. Some other languages like C, C++, program will run like a champ, and you won't even notice there's something wrong with it until it doesn't work, and which it won't, because that's just the way C++ works. Okay, so it's actually good if the programming language generates these error messages as early as possible. If you get a syntax error, that's the best kind of an error, because you don't have to waste time trying to figure out what went wrong with my program. It's just something wrong with the syntax. Okay, so the logical and the runtime errors are a lot harder to figure out than these syntax errors. Okay, even though you're probably, if you're at an early stage, you think syntax errors are, terrible. So that's that, and that is pretty much everything that I wanted to tell you about selection. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these assignments and give you and the online students some clues on what we're going to do with this. So, and yeah, you have 6 assignments for this week. Not bad. Okay, and I actually give you the clues underneath. So, alright, let's do it again anyway. Alright, so you have write a program to compute a person's height. User will enter 2 whole numbers, feet and inches, values output is the values that were input and the total in inches. Alright, and here's a sample run right here. Okay, so this one's basic. What kind of let's just do this. Alright, so this is P6 hint. Alright, so we're supposed to enter. Let's try to resize this a little bit. Okay, so you're supposed to write a program. What kind of an input is this going to be? Integer. Okay, so let's call A is equal to int input. Please enter number 1. Alright, that good stuff. Alright, you do the same thing for B. Alright, same thing. Same as above. Alright, and then what are we supposed to do? You're supposed to find total inches, right? So I guess let's call this, this is inches. Or feet. Let's go with feet. Alright, this is my feet. Alright, so you're supposed to calculate the total inches. Alright, what do? We get the feet multiplied by 12. Is it 12? 12 plus then inches. Alright, then you add the inches business, and then you show the total inches, and that's it. Okay, I'm not sure if there's anything else you're supposed to do. There's not even anything to do with ifs, right? So this is just basically still the good old stuff that we've been doing. Just input and output, a little bit of arithmetic here and there. Okay? So that's the P6. Any questions? Basic stuff, hopefully, because you've been keeping up with the work. Next one is P6. P7, I mean. Okay. Write a program to compute the circumference of a circle. The user will input the radius of a circle. Output will show the circumference and area of the circle with the radius. Right? I give you a sample run, right? So you ask the user for some kind of a number for a radius, and then you calculate the circumference and the area. Okay? So let's go back to this thing real quick. P7 hint. Alright, so you have some kind of a radius is equal to, let's go with int, or let's go with float. Float input, please enter a radius. Alright, and then you have to find the area, which is, what is it, 2 times pi times r, right? And the perimeter, did I get it right? No, pi r squared. Come on, math people. This is pi r squared, right? That's the area. How do we do squared? This way? No, not in programming. In Python, you do r, let's do it times r, that's the squared in Python. Okay? Another way to do it is you could have also done 3.14, and there is a pi inside Python. Okay, but let's just do 3.14. You can do pi times r, same thing. Okay, nothing fancy. And the perimeter is 2 pi r. Right? And then you show these things. But are they supposed to be rounded or something? Rounded to 1 decimal. Right? So print perimeter equals %.1f and then %perim. Okay? So that's your P7 hint. And hopefully I got some ifs and elses for today. Okay, so that's the 7. Multiplication table, still not ifs and elses. Okay, so the multiplication table has to do with just printing out things and formatting them neatly. Alright, so I have this table here. Alright, this is your P8 hint. P8 hint. Alright, so we're going for this business. Okay, make this table. And the way it's going to work is this number is equal to this times this. This number is equal to this times this. Let's say this number. This number is equal to this times this. Okay, so how do we do it? The first thing I will do is I'll just get this stuff here, copy it, put a print, throw that stuff in there in quotes, preferably. Okay, then underneath it I'm going to have a print 0.1, right? And then inside here is what I'm going to have a %.1f. This one is going to be a %.1f. This one is going to be a %.1f. Okay, and then in here I'm going to do a percent, and then it's this one here is equal to this times this. So I just go, all right, this is 0.1 times 0.1. Then the next one is 0.2 times 0.1, 0.2 times 0.1. The next one is 0.3 times 0.1. And I'm omitting this 0 just so that I have some extra space. Okay, and you do the same thing. You can do the zeros too. It doesn't make a difference really. Okay, and then same thing for the other one. Right, you're gonna get this, throw it in there. Next one is gonna be a 2. Right, this piece stays the same, but this time it's 0.1 times 0.2, then it's 0.2 times 0.2, then it's 0.3 times 0.2, right, and etc. etc. You do the rest for the other lines. Okay, questions? We're good? Okay, so nothing with its selection yet. It's pretty much kind of like practice exercises from the topic of last week, just formatting the output and input. Just the output really. Okay, user height message. All right, that one's got an if in it. So this one basically takes your program from P9, right, where you had to compute a person's height, and now you're supposed to give them some kind of a message. 3 different messages. One message is if they're over 72 inches. One message is if they're between 5 feet and 6 feet. And another message is if they're less than 60. Okay? So let's go back to the thing. So this was, I'll call this P9, P8, P6, and P9 hint. Okay? So once I have my total inches figured out, I just have some ifs, right? So if my total inches is over 70, is that what it was? 72. All right, you give them some kind of a message. All right, print, you are too tall or something. All right, shame the user. And then if you have another one where the height is between 5 and 6 feet, all right, what's 5 feet in inches? 5 times 12, 60. I know, the American system sucks. You should all switch to metric, it's way easier. So 5 times 12, 60, 6 times 12, 72. So if that's the first message, so L, if my total inches is less than, I said 60, oh no, bigger than 60, and total inches is less than 72, then I get, tell them they're just average, right? You're just average. And you can think of some other insult for the third message yourself, okay? Tell them they're vertically challenged. So do that. One thing that I kind of forgot to mention is the purpose of AND is, right? One of the purposes of an AND is you check to see if a number is within an acceptable range. Okay? So in this case, I'm checking to see if the range of values for total inches is between 60 and 72. So that's a perfect candidate for an AND. Okay? If I'm trying to see if a number is outside of an acceptable range, right? If I'm trying to see if a number is outside of an acceptable range, like this here, the number was either less than 0 or bigger than 123, so it does not fall between 0 and 123, that's a candidate for an OR. Okay? So those are just some practical applications. Okay, so that is your P6, P9, one more, or 2 more, and we're done. Okay, this one now is letter grades. So this one is P10 hint, format P8, and let's do it here. P10 hint. All right, so you have a student grade, or let's call it percent. Percent is equal to, and let's have it as a float because it makes sense. Input, please enter your grade percent. Okay, and then you just give them different messages. So let's say if my percent is less than 0 or my percent is greater than 100, then I'll tell them print invalid percent. Okay, because that makes sense. And then I'm going to have an elif my percent is greater than 90 or greater than or equal to 90, and my percent is less than or equal to 100, then I'll say print you have an A. Okay, and how would I show the quotes if I wanted to show them around an A? I do a backslash in front. Okay, so now the A is going to show in quotes. Another way to show this is you could say, you can get this whole thing, and you can put this here in single quotes, and then you don't need to do the backslash. Okay, so if you do double quotes inside of the single quotes, then it'll show them, and if you want to show double quotes inside double quotes, then you got to do the backslash quotes. Okay, and then you do the rest. So you got to do the B, the C, the D, the F, right? All that good stuff. Okay. Do the rest. So I'm going to comment this out. Okay, 10, 11. Is that the one for this week? Let's find out. Let me go back to week 2. Do we have a 10? Ooh, we have 11 there, yeah. Okay, so the rock, paper, scissors. Anyone not know the rules? I'll assume some of you don't. Okay, so it works like this. You have 2 players. Each chooses either rock, paper, scissors, or you can have them choose 1, 2, 3, whatever you want. Okay, however you want to set it up. You can even have them type words. Who cares? Okay, and the bottom line is paper covers rock. So this is when paper wins. Rock breaks scissors. This is when rock wins and scissors cuts paper. Or you could have a tie. So these are the predicted ways for this game to end. Okay, so what you're going to do is, and do I say anything about a random number? Yeah, I'll show you about a random number here too. Okay, so there's an extra credit option for this to do a random number, and the way you do random numbers in Python is you do import random. Let's just do it another way. From random import rand int. That's it. Okay? And then if I wanted to show a random number, I just say random num is equal to rand int, I don't know, between 1 to 3. Okay? Make a random number between 1 to 3. That's it. That's how you make a random number in Python. Very easy. Okay? But let's not even look at this random number business. What you're going to have is, you're going to have a player 1 is equal to some kind of a number, and it's going to be like an int input, please, damn it, bless you, please enter, I don't know, rock, 1 is for rock, 2 is for paper, and 3 is for scissors. Okay, that will be the input, but for testing purposes, I'm not going to do this because I'm really lazy. I don't like to enter numbers into my programs over and over and over until they're all done. Okay, so I'm just going to go, all right, this one's 1. Okay, and then player 2, same as the other one, I'm just going to call it 2. Okay, and it's going to be the same thing that, all right, for player 1. I'll just say same as above. Okay, so then this is where it would help if you make your own variables. Well, you could do things like, all right, well, if my player 1 is equal to 1 and my player 2 is equal to 2, then I have to figure out, okay, which one was 1? Well, one was rock, and the other one is paper. It just gets confusing trying to think about this stuff. Why don't I do this? All right? Instead of trying to remember what's 1 and what's 2, remember meaningful variable names? I'm going to say, all right, rock equals 1, paper equals 2, scissors equals 3. All right? Then I go in there, instead of 1, I'm going to use rock. All right? And instead of 2, I'm going to use paper. Okay? So if player 1 is rock and player 2 is paper, this is which one? Who wins? Player 2, right? P2 wins. Paper covers rock. Okay? So basically what you want to do is, or one way to do this is, this is 3 ways for player 2 to win. Okay? So you just grab this thing, you can copy it if you want, or type if you like. Okay, so now is the second, so one way for player 2 to win was if player 1 was paper, right? So let's say now player 2 has to be rock. What does player 1 have to be in order for player 2 to win? Scissors. scissors. And again, I don't have to think, oh wait, which one was the scissors? Is it 3? I just made a variable called scissors. Saves me time. Okay, and then get this. Paste. Now it's player 2 wins. Rock. Breaks. Scissors. Okay, and then you have another case for when player 2 can win, and let me just give you that too. Why not? Oops. Okay, so what's the third case for the player 2 to win? You help me. Scissors, and this is paper. Okay, and that's it. So then you go in there and you do scissors, cuts, paper. Okay, so you have to do 3 more ways. 3 ways for player 1 to win now. Right, so we just exhausted one of the opportunities. One way for this thing to end is player 2 to win. Another one is player 1 to win. And then we also have, I guess if you want, 3 ways. Or 1 way if you can think of it. Or 1 if you can think of it. For tie. Okay? Make sense? And that's your last one for today. That's your P whatever. P10? P11 hint. P11 hint. This? Okay, so I'm saying random variable num, or random num, which is just a variable I made up, is going to be equal to randint. Randint is a built-in function in Python, just like it knows what input does, just like it knows what int is. It also knows what randint is, but it's actually randint is part of another library called random. So I'm telling it from this random library import randint, and now I can use this. And this is just you telling it, okay, make me a random number from this to this. So every time I run the program, it will be a different random number. It could be 1, could be 2, could be 3. Sometimes you run the program 10 times, and just to piss you off, it will give you the same random number. But it's supposed to be a different random number, okay? And this is a pseudo-random number. It's not a real, true random thing, because somebody wrote some kind of a code for this thing to generate random numbers. So there's a fixed algorithm of how these random numbers are generated. If you really wanted to have random number events, you're gonna have to use look at subatomic articles, or look at wind moving around and stuff like that. So, but it's as good as of a random as we're gonna get in this. Okay. Bottom line is you say some kind of a variable equals randint, and this is the starting value. This is the ending value of whatever you're trying to make a random number of. Okay. Integers only. So that's it. That's your week 2. And that's all I have. Thanks for coming. I'll see you next week. Don't forget, keep up with the work. Send me emails if you get stuck on something. Don't procrastinate. Okay? Save this.